Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Hey, Brewer fans. Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast number 45. With joining me today is Scott and Vince. Talk about the awesome Brewers last week. We took two of three at home from the Chicago Cubs, and we swept the San Francisco Giants at home. 5-1 on the week. I think that exceeded all our expectations. And according to Scott Bartel's latest data, with 18 games left playing the season, now have a 94% chance of making the playoffs. So there's more team than that since they've only done it 4 times in 48 seasons. So, what are your guys' thoughts?
I mean, yeah, it's been a really exciting week of baseball. I was a little bit dreading this Giants series at home. I think we discussed it on the last podcast, and you know, it's kind of a weird series. It seems like every year against the Giants, it can go either way. But boy, this year the Brewers have really dominated. We've won all but one game to the Giants in both series. So the Brewers are 6-1 on the season series against the Giants. So that's pretty exciting. And then you couple that with the Cubs have been 5-5, I believe, in their last 10 games. And the Brewers have just been playing incredibly. So if we can, you know, it looks like with the Cubs rain out today in Washington, D.C., that they're going to be playing every day for the remainder of the season with no off days. So
it's too bad.
Yeah, I know. Really, really sad for us who are Brewer fans. And, you know, that really plays in, I think, to the Brewers' favor, along with a little bit, I would say, easier schedule for the Brewers going forward as well. So, yeah, very exciting times. And the team finally seems to be clicking on all cylinders. And, Craig, you pointed out where, you know, we've got an incredible performance from our bullpen in the first half, and then our offense is great for a couple of weeks, but it seemed like at times things weren't clicking at the same time. And it seems like right now, knock on wood, but boy, everything seems to be clicking right now for this team, which is the perfect time of year to be doing it.
Scott.
Yeah, it's actually been a pretty awesome week. I don't know why, but like maybe it's like just that sort of Brewer fan mentality, you know, the whole build me up buttercup kind of thing. But yeah, like Vince was saying, I kind of expected this week to, I mean, it just seemed like for the last couple weeks, actually, just seemed like the Cubs and the Cardinals could not lose. And oh man, what a week for us. I mean, it worked out so well. We're technically, as of the time of this taping, we're only 2 games back behind the Cubs. We're 20 games over 500. That's our high water mark of the year. You would think even 500 ball the rest of the year is plenty to get us in the playoffs. Although, yeah, that would be 91 wins. I mean, there's an outside chance if we get really hot that we could actually wind up, you know, having the best record in Brewer history this year. So you never know.
It's interesting. A couple of things, first of all, about this week. Yeah, definitely exceeded my expectations. I did see some stat that we were like 25-10 or something along those lines against the NL West, which is traditionally a division that we don't fare very well, especially on the road against. So that's really, I think, the key to our success this season so far in reality.
You saw that on our Twitter feed, Craig.
Funny thing about our about the Cubs. They got swept in a doubleheader that actually they endured several rain delays, and I think it ended at like 2 a.m. or something, or later. I thought that was really hilarious just because of the fact that the previous night there was rain, and the Nationals decided to cancel the game fairly quickly, and the Cubs were upset about it. And I was thinking the whole time, well, there's a dose of their own medicine. So yeah, take that Cubs. Hopefully the Brewers big series at Wrigley, our last 3 games of the season against Cubs coming up on tap the next 3 days. The Brewers definitely have a chance to still win the division, but I think we have to fare very well in that series. Of our 18 remaining games, we only really play 2 teams that are over 500, and they're both on 3-game road trips to Wrigley and of course to St. Louis for the next 2 weeks. Beyond that, we have 6 games left against the Pirates, who are about 500 right now, and 3 games against the Reds, 3 games against the Tigers. So those are pretty favorable schedule. I think I don't know if the Brewers go. I mean, they're still battling for both wild card spots, including the division. Typically, the Brewers could slip in the playoffs if they go 500 the rest of the way. But I mean, I really feel that the other teams are going to be playing very well as well. So I would hope that we go above 500 and just solidify that spot. I really, especially want, if we end up not winning the division, I really want that wild card game to be at Miller Park. That excites me greatly because I mean, Scott Bartell will be coming home and possibly Vince too to attend the wild card game. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I took vacation just in case. The only way that things don't work out for me is if, let's say we go to a wild card game, we win that, and then the next series, I think I'd have to go back to work like around game 4 or 5 or something like that of that series, which means I might take a couple sick days. Luckily, no one listens to this podcast, so there's no way that they'll be able to prove that I wasn't sick.
Yeah, your boss seems to be kind of busy doing other things anyway, so I'm sure you're fine with that.
I would definitely like to get back if the Brewers are in a one-game playoff. Ideally, we win the division so we don't have to be in a one-and-done playoff scenario for the wild card. So we can still hope for that, I think, until the series, at least against the Cubs this week. But, yeah, I mean, in the event of a one-gamer, I'd love to get back for that.
Yeah, and the thing to point out is the winner of the wild card game would most likely at this point go. Of course, they play the team with the best record in the NL, and it looks like unless the Brewers overtake them, it would be the Cubs as the winners of the NL Central. So it'd be exciting to think that we'd get past, if we get past, win that wild card championship, that we'd be playing the Cubs in the first round series, and the thought of knocking them out of the playoffs would definitely put a smile on my face, or the opportunity to do so even. So.
Yeah, but that actually kind of brings up a little bit of an interesting point. That means that we would either think of all the demons that we'd have to exercise, I guess, this year in order to do we dare even think about even getting to the NLCS, much less the World Series or anything like that. But I mean, you'd have to host a playoff game, hopefully, against the Cardinals and beat them, and then like you said, beat the Cubs with obviously them having home field advantage there. So, I mean, to be able to get really, really hot right now and win this division, that would be phenomenal, because then you have the Cubs and probably Cardinals, you never know, but probably Cubs and Cardinals have to take each other out and then come to Milwaukee. Now that would be something.
Yeah, that'd be pretty exciting. That'd be very exciting. And, there's a lot of playoff scenarios that are still, developing. I think with the number of teams that are still in this thing, that it's a little tough to project, although I can't really see a scenario where we don't have to exercise the demons of at least the Cubs or the Cardinals, to advance at least in the playoffs. So, yeah, it's going to be a really fun or devastating couple of weeks. But, hey, let's look optimistically and lean on the fun side for right now. I think that's a better scenario. And with the way the team is playing, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility by any stretch of the imagination.
I think Brewer fans are starting to get some pretty interesting email questions already, and we even got one already, which I think maybe we can discuss on this episode. It might be a little bit early, but the question we got was, should the Brewers start Wade Miley on 3 days rest during the playoff series so that he can pitch more often?
Wow.
Great question.
Pretty interesting question.
Very good question. Yeah, that's interesting.
Maybe it's
I don't think
it's
a question.
A 7-game in the NL championship series. Probably there's 3 starts out of Miley.
It's a question that even the most optimistic of us, you, Craig, would not have projected probably being a question at the beginning of the season. But, boy, I don't know if we would do that. I think that Miley is definitely proven, though, that he's tweaked something in his mechanics. I don't know what it is, if he's been working with Derek Johnson, but he is certainly a much, much better pitcher than the Wade Miley of last year with Baltimore or in other years past with Arizona and Boston and other teams. I think that
he did have one good year as a Diamondback. I think his second year in the league, but then I think it's been the past 6 seasons have been just completely atrocious. But I'm glad.
I think it's good.
Good way.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Wade Miley's finally back. Unbelievable.
Wade Miley was an all-star once in his career, and I forget which year it was. I want to say it was like 14, but I could be wrong on that. Scott, maybe you could have your intern Kelly look that up for us. I don't remember exactly what year that was, but Miley was definitely he was a one-time All-Star for sure.
Yeah.
But I do think that Derek Johnson or somebody has tweaked something with his delivery that has led to these results. I mean, his some of his numbers are not the best, but in terms of like FIP, I think, and a few other ones, but you look at the bottom line results and he's been right there amongst the best starters in the NL Central for sure this year. And it's crazy to say that, but there he is.
It's very interesting. First of all, I just want to point out that Gio Gonzalez had a successful Brewers debut on Saturday, beating the Giants. So I know Vince was a big advocate of that acquisition, and the Stearns got done just before the August trade deadline. I think he will be a key member of any type of playoff rotation. I guess the first other topic we should talk about going forward tonight would be what are your guys' thoughts on basically both Junior Guerra and Freddie Peralta, who you have to give those guys credit for definitely contributing majorly to the Brewers' rotation during the parts of the year. Peralta is a rookie. We didn't really expect anything out of it at the beginning of the year. He had some great starts and looks like a possible really future stud in our rotation. And then you've got Junior Guerra, who, again, had kind of a lost season last year after a surprising one 2 years ago. And we didn't expect much of anything out of him this year, and he pitched fairly admirably for most of the year. Both those guys lost a rotation spot to both Gio Gonzalez and the return of Zach Davies. So what are your overall thoughts on, all the way through that question, like, what do you think about Stearns making those moves to make those upgrades at the time, if they were necessary, and what you expect, out of our new starting rotation depth, so to speak?
Well, I mean, the Brewers denied it, but I don't really believe them. I think that, them saying that Freddie Peralta doesn't have an innings count this year, I think is a bit disingenuous, and they're saying that just to keep their options open if he were to be needed going forward here in the last few weeks of the year. But I really do think he had an innings limit. I know that he's already, I think he's like 40 or 50 innings over what he pitched in AAA last year already on the year total between Colorado Springs and Milwaukee. And I tend to think that because he is such a young prospect and because the Brewers obviously value him enough to not include him in any deadline deals, they don't want to abuse his arm a bit this year. So I think he's going to be kind of just in the bullpen if needed, a guy that can come in, but not a guy that they're going to rely on to start much going forward. And, this year, but I think that that's just because we value him so much for seasons going forward, and we've got other alternatives this year. And Guerra, for him, I think that he really pitched his way out of a rotation spot just with his last 5 starts, or even more generally after the All-Star break.
Scott, do you have any thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, you kind of hit it on the head. I mean, it looks like he's thrown, about 30 innings more this year than he did last year, which is pretty solid. But he is at that 150 inning mark, so that may have been kind of where they were thinking about with him. But what's really weird is that both Guerra and Peralta have both shown that they could be brilliant pitchers. They've also shown that they can go out there and get blown up this year. And I mean, when you look at Gio Gonzalez, I think a lot of us were kind of asking, like, is this a guy that's really going to even improve the rotation all that much? And, so that we have Miley and Gonzalez would be, I think, our only 2 left-handed starters now. So, if there is a team that we play in the playoffs that maybe struggle against lefties or something like that, we don't have to throw Miley out there every 3 days like everyone wants. So
Yeah, no,
it's interesting. Oh, go ahead, Vince.
Well, I was just going to say really quick, a guy like Gio is a veteran who, won 20 games, I think, just last year. So, I mean, adding a guy like that to the rotation to give us some depth, not that Freddie Peralta doesn't have the talent level to execute, but just having that veteran experience and savvy on the mound could be a really good thing for a team going into the postseason. Gio's played in the postseason, the last several years with the Nationals, and I think that experience does matter a bit. Going forward, at least much more than it does, in May and June when guys are just getting their feet wet during the season. So I think that having a guy like that for the stretch run is a good thing. Yeah,
it's definitely very interesting. I was just going to look at the talent level on the Brewers. rotation. It still kind of concerns me going into a playoff series, but if you look at it this way, I really just feel like we have a cobbled together rotation that no one would have ever suspected, include the guys we have in it right now at the beginning of the year, that is really just kind of a microcosm of number 3 pitchers that are, I mean, I'm just going to quick go down the line. I mean, first of all, Julio Chastain, in my opinion, talent level, he's a number 4 type starter, and he's pitching like a number 1. So you take the median of that and you expect it from him each time, and he's exceeding expectations. Then you got Chase Anderson. To me, going in the year, he could have been like the talent of a number 2 pitcher, but he's been pitching more like a number 4 starter. So there you go. You're number 3 with him. Then you go down the line. Obviously, Gio Gonzalez now in a rotation, even for the Nationals. I mean, he was formerly like a number 2 starter in his career years, but with the Nationals, he was pitching like 4 or 5. So again, right in the median there of number 3. Then you got Wade Miley, who was about a number 7 pitcher, pitching like I'll say a number 2, but really almost borderline ace. So that puts them right in that same range. And then you've got Zach Davies, who really probably is only a number 3 starter, and he was out for most of the year after pitching. When he did pitch, he pitched like a number 6 or something like that. But now in his starts back, he looks like he could be solidifying back in that range of a number 3 starter. So again, you have all these guys that we keep asking the question over and over on our podcast. Who do we start? Who's our top 2 guys, our top guy in a wild card game? Who's our top 2 guys in the NLCS? I don't even know what the answer to that is. Outside, I guess, really, from this season alone, Julio Chastain has exceeded my expectations and all Brewer fans' expectations, and probably even Stern, the way he's pitching. I think he's got 14 wins and just awesome stats and pretty been reliable. It just blows me away that he's been that good.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this Brewer team, the way that it's built, I mean, on one hand, you're like, we have so much talent. We're so deep. We have 5 all-stars. We've never had that. That's unbelievable. And then you kind of look at it and go, we really don't have any superstars. And, that depth is nice. But if somebody does go down on this team, it's almost like, okay, well, we have, this person to fill in. And it's really not going to be that much of a step down almost no matter who it is, like throughout the entire roster. So it's weird the way that it's panned out, I guess, but you can't argue with the results.
One thing I should point out about our week, and the one loss we did have against the Cubs is the last game of the series against the Cubs, which I know we really wanted to sweep to have a shot at the division title. There was some controversy. I was going to get your guys' quick thoughts on it. At this point, it seems like a moot point because after sweeping the Giants, I mean, who cares? But we did, or I should say, Craig Counsell did not play Christian Yelich, our MVP caliber star, in the 3rd game against the Cubs. We ended up losing that game, and there was some backlash from Brewer fans about that. I guess just as some of the 3 biggest Brewer fans in history, I consider ourselves. What are your thoughts on that move?
Oh, man, I've gone back and forth about this all week. I've listened to a lot of the post-game radio coverage that was done on WSSP The Fan and, a few other shows, and read some stuff online. And it's really interesting. I think that, first of all, we do have to understand that guys do need a day off. It's a long, long season. It's 162 games. You do need a day off. It's a long, long year. And I don't know if I would have done it that game, though. And it seemed like with the off day the next day that maybe the Brewers were, just really needing to get him 2 days. And if that was what Craig Counsell saw, I guess you have to go with the guys that are in the clubhouse and on the ground that see him every day. That being said, I wish he would have played, but it really didn't cost us a ton. I don't think the guys that filled in for him, I think Granderson was on base twice that day, and Yelich did come into the game and get a pinch hit base hit in the 7th, I believe. And, so it is what it is. But I was a little surprised at the timing, and I think that the idea originally was to do it the first game of the series against a pitcher that Yelich didn't have as good numbers against, but he really wanted to play, and that's why he played the first game and set the 3rd game of the series. But for what it's worth, I guess if that means that Yelich can play just about every game now going forward the rest of the year, and we've still got 18 games left after today's win against the Giants, then that in and of itself is probably more valuable than having a very tired and sore Christian Yelich not playing at 100%, the next few weeks when we really need him every day.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was just, I don't know. The whole thing was just a little bit weird. I mean, he's probably our best player. I'd like to see him start, especially in a really pivotal game against the Cubs. Not only, obviously, would that have been a 2-game swing. Okay, so right now we would have been tied for the Cubs with the division if we were able to win that game. But it's also not like he got the day off. I mean, he did have to pinch hit later in the game at a really crucial moment. And I don't know what his record is against Quintana, but obviously with the lefty-lefty matchup, maybe they felt that they could give him, that sort of half day off or whatever and not lose much by bringing a righty in there. I guess I really can't say. But he did come in a pivotal moment. He was the tying run. He got a base hit. And unfortunately, we still didn't win. But it is what it is. I probably would have liked to see him start, but I can't argue with them giving him a day.
Yeah, I pretty much echo your guys' thoughts. In hindsight now, back then when it was going on, I was upset that he got the day off. I mean, I really wanted that game against the Cubs. I thought having our best player on the lineup was stupid. And Vince's point that, hey, the Brewers had off the next day, so why does he need 2 days off? I mean, go back 10, 15 years and try to give Cal Ripken 2 days in a row off and see how that works. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. And actually, it seems like, I don't know if you guys have actually noticed this, but over the couple of years, Cal was a manager, he actually has done this quite often, trying to get players a day off right before or right after a scheduled off day. So in his mind, somehow it helps the player to have 2 days off in a row. I don't know why, if it's something like to recover from injuries or if he thinks it really recharges the batteries or something, like if you have 2 consecutive days off. I don't understand his philosophy. Maybe it's brilliant. I don't know, but I guess just my quick thoughts are I don't necessarily agree with it based off baseball history and what have you. But anyway,
yeah, and fair enough on that point, Craig. And I generally disagree with the amount of off days that guys need in this generation, but it seems like it is a generation thing across positions. I mean, you see pitchers not being able to throw nearly as many innings. That's why we don't have any complete games hardly at all anymore. A guy like Ripken today, I don't know if he would exist, and he only retired, 20 years, or not even 20 years ago. It is kind of mind-boggling how things have changed so quickly in baseball where, you need to get a guy a day off every month, it seems like, at least, and maybe in previous generations that wasn't the case. But I don't think that Yelich is an aberration. I don't think he takes too many days off himself by any stretch. I think he's kind of normal for this generation of baseball players.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm nothing against Yelich. Guy's been phenomenal for us, obviously, and it's not like he requested a day off or anything, like whatever people are thinking. But anywho, basically, I also want to point out that I'm really encouraged by a couple of things. Obviously, Soria coming back from injury, and Knebel coming back from the minor leagues have both looked pretty good and really give our bullpen some phenomenal depth. And also just to give a kudos to Xavier Cedeno has looked pretty good, another lefty option out of the pen, especially since Jennings is a little bit struggling. I think that's a nice upgrade or another option to have. And Vince talked about it earlier about depth. Really thinking about the way this team has been built, and I know I don't have 2 minutes more time on this podcast, but to me, I disagreed with not having top rotation starters, but I'm seeing now, taking a step back, Stern's overall plan potentially with this team and how it's built. Pretty much focus on high-end offensive players. That's, obviously echoes to how they've been drafted since Stern's have been here, the first round in particular, but also, acquiring guys like Kane and Yelich over pitchers that were available on the market. And not only that, and then building the depth now throughout the season, getting guys out. Basically, if you have guys coming off the bench like talented Braun, Thames, Granderson, and sometimes even Shaw coming off the bench, or depending on who's starting, I mean, that's a phenomenal bench, especially going into potential playoffs. So I think that was his philosophy there. Same thing then basically just collect a bunch of number 3 talented starters and try to squeeze the most out of them. I don't know, and that's obviously been working like a charm. And then build a phenomenal bullpen. Obviously, Josh Hader and the fact that he's a Brewer was a huge catalyst of that. But even, Corey Knebel was acquired at some point via trade. Kim Soria was acquired via trade. Obviously, even Josh Hader was acquired via trade. So, this whole bullpen the Brewers have built and continue to build, I think really speaks to if they're going to make a run in the playoffs, it's not because they're going to rely on their ace starter pitching on 3 days rest like Wade Miley, like I mentioned. Instead, it'll be with the awesome offensive depth and awesome bullpen depth. And I think it's definitely a different way to build a team, but I think it could work. That's for sure.
Yeah, those are great points, Craig. And, it is, like you said, a kind of a hodgepodge in some weird ways. But one point that you just made that I totally agree with is the bench aspect of it. They have guys like Curtis Granderson or, some of the other names, Mike Moustakas or whoever's not starting that day to be able to come off the bench. And we've talked about it on this podcast way earlier in the season, but even moving Ryan Braun into a role like that, whether that's this year or seasons going forward. But to have that strong bench, to me, is a mark of a complete team. And I think that when you look back at World Series winners or playoff teams from the past years, especially the last seems like 5 to 10 years, you're going to notice that the bench is really, really deep. And I think that goes back to like those mid-90s Yankees teams. I just remember those teams as always having just an incredible bench and guys like Darryl Strawberry or David Justice or Cecil Fielder available to pinch hit that weren't even starting. And it just seems like that was really their strength. So, if the Brewers are using a kind of a weird hodgepodge model of that, I'm all for it. And I think that you're going to continue to see that from David Stearns-led Brewer teams going forward, where you do have guys that are available, like a Granderson, who are available for relatively cheap as bench options. And I think that we're going to continue to be picking up guys like that, at the deadline each year going forward. It seems to be kind of a Stearns MO. And I'll throw out guys like maybe even a Neil Walker last year. It just seems like the way that he values roster spots, for August and September teams.
Yeah, and when you think about it, when you're comparing like a Yankees team like that to a Brewers team now, first of all, we're in the NL, so we have obviously the double switch, and so bench depth is even more important. And when you picture that a lot of our starters are going, 5 innings instead of 6 or 7, that means that's one extra, potential double switch or one extra substitution there. So it's even more important to have that kind of depth on the bench.
Great points, guys. That's basically the key to this whole formula. Your strength is your bullpen, therefore the depth of your bench is that much more important. And your collection of hodgepodge number 3 starters, you only need them to get 5 or 6 innings, and you turn over the rest of the game to your awesome bullpen and your deep bench. That's basically the formula. And kudos for Stearns for concocting it. And basically, it's going to possibly, hopefully, get us the Brewers the playoffs this year. So I know we're short on time. But before we wrap it up, this week, 3 huge games at Wrigley against the Cubs, and of course 3 home games against the Pirates. Let's do our predictions for the week. Who wants to start us off?
Boy, I've been kind of dreading the series at Wrigley Field, but you know what? We got to do it. Like you guys were mentioning at the beginning of the episode, if the Brewers are going to take that next step this year or any year really in the next 5 years going forward, we're going to have to beat the Cubs and the Cardinals. So huge series at Wrigley Field, obviously, this week. I'm going to be optimistic, and I'm going to say that the Brewers are going to win 2 of the 3 games against the Cubs in Chicago. I know that we would all like a sweep, but just trying to be a bit realistic and tamper expectations a little bit. That being said, the Brewers are hot right now. The Cubs are not as hot, and the Cubs have got to be drained from the series out in Washington with all the rain and late games and double headers. Hopefully that is taking its toll on the Cubs, and if the Brewers can get a sweep, that'd be awesome. I'll officially predict 2 of 3 from the series in Chicago.
Okay, Scott.
Well, believe it or not, we do have to face Quintana again, so I'm sure Yelich will have another day off. No, I'm just kidding. But, we're going to face Lester, Quintana, and Hendricks. and then against Pittsburgh, Archer, Novin, and Williams. So I actually think, hate to say it, I think we're going to lose 2 or 3 against the Cubs, and I think we're going to take 2 or 3 from Pittsburgh, leaving us at 500, which is fine. It means, that at that point we're going to have 11 games to go and probably a pretty sizable or a really good shot at the wild card. At that point, unfortunately, probably not enough to get the division.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping we really have to do well against the Cubs this week to take the division. I think like a sweep basically, but I'll predict us go 4-2. I don't know which games will win, but I really think we need to get back at the Pirates for that 5-game sweep before the All-Star. We still have 6 games left against them. I want to win at least 4 of those.
But I'm hoping to get out to the series in Pittsburgh too, guys. Just so you're aware, we're planning on getting out to the Saturday and Sunday games in Pittsburgh. Won't be able to do the Friday one, but trying to get to at least the Saturday game and hopefully the Sunday game as well in Pittsburgh in a couple of weeks.
Is that a road trip? We could, well, maybe not a road trip.
The last time I was at beautiful PNC Park in Pittsburgh was with Craig Mueller on a road trip of all road trips in 2008. I don't believe you were with us, Scott, but Craigers and I went, and I remember we saw Matt White. No, who was pitching that game? Well, anyways, I know it was 2008, and it was pretty awesome stadium, but I have not been back since then, so I'm looking forward to it. It's been 10 years already.
Wow, that was a sweet stadium.
Last time I was there was actually also with Craig. I stayed up 44 straight hours. Thank you, Hank. 44 straight hours. We drove all the way down there. Craig actually did like 98% of the driving, and then I took the last 2% to get us to the hotel.
Driving, Scott. Why would you do that? You hate driving.
I literally fell asleep in rush hour traffic several times. And then I remember going to the game, having delicious pulled pork behind the center field fence. And then I think we went to a bar, and I think we watched the Packers barely win. And then
is that the stadium that our anonymous source Tom Carter says is his favorite in the league?
Tom actually Tom C. He wants it, or T. Carter. But yeah, Tom totally wants to. He did say that. He said, it's very picturesque, and we were like, well, yeah, but it's in Pittsburgh. That was his only problem with it. But, still really nice.
He did say something about it is north of the Mason-Dixon line, I believe. He doesn't like going south, that he said for some reason. I'm not sure, but
that's true. It's about 4 hours exactly from me here in Washington, so it's within a fairly reasonable drive to get up there, so it's not too bad.
Yeah, I remember we asked if he wanted to go to Huntsville to see our AA team when we did our road trip, and he was like, no, it's a hard pass. So.
Yeah, he did say that, actually. He did say that.
Oh, well. All right. Well, it's 18 games left this season, guys. I'm very excited to I'm going to buy a ticket for the last game against the Tigers, I think, at least. Hopefully some other ones. I think I'm going to try going actually next week, Monday, against the Reds. We'll see. Definitely big week. So go Brewers.
Go Brewers, guys. And just a quick reminder to our fans who are listening, please give us a follow on Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter, where we've actually picked up quite a few followers here in the last few days. Craig, I don't know if you're noticing, but Scotty and I have been managing some of the social media this week, and I think we've got 12 followers in the last day here, so you can see that. I think it's partially the enthusiasm again for the Brewers, which is exciting to see. So keep sending us your questions on Twitter. We'll try to get to them on one of our next podcasts. You can also email us at brewcrewreviewpodcasts with an S @gmail.com.
Yeah, the Brewers aren't giving Kev Kalen that many opportunities to go on in the rant, so I'm hoping there's one loss on next week.
No, he had one today that was not a rant. It just said Brewers, yes, exclamation points.
That's as positive as we can get from him. We'll take it.
That's our Cato tweet of the week. And after wins, I have been trying to at him, to just show him that we won, just so he's aware. Because I know he gave up Twitter, but maybe he still gets the notifications via email or something. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
All right, stay classy, Northern Chicagoans. We're coming to take the series.
Go Brewers!
That's right,
Go
guys.
Brewers.
Go Brewers. Stay classy, guys.